Remember mooning with Edgy?
We went. God, I forgot this stuff. Well, you don't know anything about that, Russ?
No.
Yeah, when we go to fires, we go to the airport down, and they didn't have the bridge at the other, so maybe we had to go through town. So different things happen when we were going through town.
Yeah.
Like BNAing out the window.
Yelling at kids and doing different things, or people
Well,
handing
we had
things
that
to
old
you.
red and white school bus.
And Dingle could shut it off for a little bit, let it go, and then turn the key on and be as loud as bang. So.
Yeah.
And since John was the driver, he was Dingle's buddy up there.
Yeah. Don't bring that
Well, that's right. Nobody wanted to drive that thing. You were forced to.
up. I kind of was forced to because I drove cattle truck.
And then they had an open window in the back, and I'd hang my head out there like a dog all the time, and he'd be yelling.
There's an old 48 white.
Yeah.
Thing.
That was
we
a
took
big-
it up to Stilicho Lookout, off on that road. If you've ever been up
That was
to
a
Stilicho.
dangerous bus. That was dangerous.
That's a miracle that we didn't get in a bad accident with it.
But it makes good stories now,
It
Randy.
makes good stories. It's great.
The pictures of it.
Yeah. You drove what?
It never ran most of the time.
Well, I remember the one picture we have is Dingle standing up on the engine peeing on it after it broke down one time. Just
Wow.
showing our respect for the whole thing.
Remember
Well, when we
every place
first
he told
started,
us that?
we, like you said, we lived together. Yeah, the second year was in a bunkhouse up down the river a little ways, and there seemed to be a lot of activity at night. There was a two-story thing, and Ed Snyder came in one night. And I think he was under the influence of some alcohol or something. And everybody that wasn't there, their mattress was down at the bottom of the staircase. You remember that?
Yeah.
And he thought that was the greatest thing he'd ever accomplished.
Yeah.
What a good guy.
That's another thing. We had to live at the bunkhouse. We couldn't live at home. We couldn't live downtown. We had to live at the bunkhouse. We had to be within an hour of being notified, or we get left behind.
And they put it on the radio, say we're all Suppression crew members will report back
Yeah.
And we
to the
couldn't-
bunkhouse.
Actually,
we couldn't be married. In fact, that's one secret we kept from you that first year. Because McMahon was not Ed. Pete McMahon got married before the season was out.
There you go. Who was asking something?
And he got married secretly, you know, and we all kept it from the Forest Service because he would have got fired probably.
Why did you think I'd ring the bell?
Because you were the boss.
John, we couldn't trust you. That's right.
Yeah,
You were the enemy.
you guys tell good stories. I never felt like a boss. Just felt like a crowd.
Well, remember Brad Kay and Eshelman, those guys started fighting, but they had to stay up there at the bunkhouse, and that was about 73 and 74. That's when they finally said.
I think part of the call list was Wenatchee Police Department, Chelan County Sheriff, Kashmir.
Any of these guys in jail?
That was your call
But
down list.
anyway, Dave was talking about this Jim Clausen earlier, and he was a nice guy, just a nice guy. You know, you can't say a bad word about him probably, but we also had to eat there. We had a cook the second year. And it wasn't bad. She fed us well.
Gladys to peas.
And
We had y'all snipped.
one evening she made hard-boiled eggs. Just, I don't know, probably 4 dozen hard-boiled eggs. And Larry Rood and I were sitting downstairs, and he said, I didn't, he said, wouldn't it be funny if we put a couple of raw eggs in there, and then somebody will crack it? Well, sure enough, we got called on a fire up north someplace, and we were on, and she said, you guys think you're going to eat? You better do it now on the way up there, because when we get out, we're digging line. And poor old Jim had his hard hat on, and he took his egg, and it's just like in the comics, took his egg, cracked it twice on the brim of his hat, and raw egg just went right down the side of his face, down his shirt. And of course then I laughed till I thought I was going to puke. and I got blamed for it, but I'm sure it was rude.
I remember the only time I was scared, we called him, you didn't like to be called Charlie, Chuck. Remember that? You didn't like to be called Charlie. The only time I was scared is when we were eating breakfast down there in Oregon somewhere. And it was Watkins. Took the lid off the salt shaker. And Chuck didn't like to talk at breakfast. He didn't talk to him at all. He just sat there silent. Very, I don't know what it was. But Watkins took the top off that salt shaker. And Chuck, sure enough, picked that thing up and dumped it all over his breakfast. And everybody was, stone silent that somebody was going to pay for it. And I couldn't stop. I couldn't keep myself from giggling. And he thought I did it.
And you're innocent.
Because we did fear him sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Remember chasing Chuck Cole out through the sagebrush with
Yeah, I remember that.
Lasky that time?
Harvesting bitterroot seed or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, we were harvesting bitterroot seeds up in Chelan.
You remember that? I think that was Chuck Cole.
It was Chuck Cole chasing.
Yeah.
I think
Don't recall.
it's kind of a good thing he outran you because I think you're about to kill him.
That could have been.
But
I don't remember what it was about. You?
No. He was a smart mouth.
What was a kid from LSU? Well, probably Troy's the only one that would remember. That was in '67.
But I remember
That was the only guy I really wanted to throttle. And he kept out of my sight for at least a week. I don't know where he went or what he did, but I'd got a hold of him. I would have put a new end to him.
When you're talking about food, the worst detail was emptying that garbage bin at the end of a fire. We'd have the fire and we'd get a call. We'd be eating or something, and we wouldn't come back for 2 or 3 weeks sometimes, and there was this garbage. We had this big giant box out the back of our bunkhouse full of garbage, and that thing would just be crawling with maggots and stink, and we'd always, you didn't want to be on the squad leader's bad side. You have to empty that and take it down to the landfill and pick up.
You work on your breakfast.
Yeah. That's the worst.
Shoot.
The fires, I was telling RJ and somebody on the way up, the only time we were scared on the fires when you started that controlled burn yourself. RJ and I were on night duty and we were taking a nap. And we woke up and the whole world was on fire. And we ran over there because it was our part of the fire line. And you were over there showing people how fire behavior. You'd started a fire to show how it, and so I all sucked up to the middle of it. We worked it right. It was an insane idea, but you did. And we was an on-the-job learning type thing.
Yeah.
But we were scared to death that we were going to get fired because we, let the fire creep across the line. And there was Ed Mose who took his sleeping bag up on the night duty.
That didn't turn out too well, did it?
He snuck it up there. It was night duty. He was gone the next day. So. Don't want to use his name. It's funny now looking back on it. Said that the fire, I never worried about fire. Yes, did you?
Yeah.
I never worried about that. Thought we were in control.
You kind of always felt that you could all work together to get it.
The thing that concerned me the most when I was leading the crew was the level of forecasting, because it was hit and miss. And the forecasters weren't used to making presentations to people standing out in the cold at the early dawn, the gray of dawn, and trying to get their interests. They were busy thinking about other things. So a lot of times, it really concerned me that the forecasts were hit and miss. And it was constant. We had on the crew a person who took the weather about every hour. And we registered that. We noted that. Because there was a few times, one in California, the one up at Chelan, that we relied on that, and if we hadn't had that, we would have gotten in trouble.
I think
The other thing of building line downhill. In Oregon, the crews complained when I was IC there at Roseburg on the incident. They were complaining that they couldn't get the work done, and I was at a general meeting and I asked why was they concerned about it. They didn't seem to get any line production. They said, well, we start out, and they take us to the top, and then we start down the side. And it says, well, that's going to stop right now. You go to where it started, and you go up. And tomorrow, you'll start from where you ended in the next day. And
Anchor and plank.
yeah, there was a fellow that came out of Oregon, and I met him up at the casino, and he says, I remember that meeting. He says, I was a firefighter from Mount Hood. He says, I remember that, and I said, he said to me, he said, I don't know why people don't do that today. I said, you're still building line downhill? Bad business. Bad business.
I think one of the biggest things that they do today that we didn't do is have spotters. You know, we didn't have spotters sitting up on the lookouts.
No.
That's made a big difference that we have a lookout up there. I don't know who we depended upon in those days.
What's the one safe way to build line downhill?
What's this, refresher?
Yeah, it's a refresher. It's a refresher. I wouldn't think you'd forget it.
Yeah, somebody supposed to, gotta know what the fire's doing, I guess, where it's at, what it's doing. Supposed to look out.
And?
Have communications. Have an escape.
And
You know, Marty Whitman.
Oh, yeah.
Marty, a friend of ours, Marty was on the crew, wasn't he?
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
while?
he was here.
He works for the National Weather Service in Missoula, and they started a program for the weather directed at the weather on a fire, keep a close eye on it for them. Anyway, he's real involved in getting that going. So
Fire line meteorologist.
yeah.
Sometimes I question the training. And not just shot crews, but all fire crews, and sometimes they overtrain. I think
You mean physically?
physically, yeah, they're doing a little bit more than they need to do. I'm not up on what they're doing right now here, but I mean, when I look at some jumper programs, I question what they do.
It's easy to come to that conclusion.
Yeah. I mean, because like I said, most firefighting is mop up and
transportation and waiting.
yeah.
Endurance for waiting.
Wondering.
I know you need it for those spurts. You need that in shape for spurts when you're digging active fire line, maybe, or you should never have to be running. Remember attitude towards fire shelters to begin with?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're a waste of time.
California,
I mean, if you
A lot of firefighters
I mean-
thought they were going to get it.
Oh.
You know, it was something not to be trusted.
we just put them in a pile because they were too much weight to carry.
A lot of
But
weight.
then when we go to California, we'd have to find them because we
Yeah.
didn't have them down there. We'd have to go out and find them,
Yeah.
take them with us.
And then our defense was you don't put yourself in that situation to begin with. If you're in that situation, you might as well say goodbye anyway. You've already passed.
Remember, we used to have all can bustins and we'd stag the bottoms so that they were all frayed. We had the fire shirt, but we just had Camp Buston's on.
We had
little
no,
green pants.
It just
Like
black-
Carhartts.
black carton.
there were no Nomex.
There was no Nomex, they were just cotton pants. The Camp Bustons, they were just a green pants.
Camp
Just-
Bustums?
yeah,
Is that
yeah,
okay?
Just a brand name.
Yeah.
Just the brand name.
Brand
And,
name.
What Carhartts are today.
and
Yeah,
Dingo would
Carhartt.
always want, we always had to wear the green shirt and green pants.
Green
Right.
pants.
And so we'd put on blue jeans, and we'd be out in the Black Forest up there after the 70 fires. We were doing all kinds of work, and they called it the Black Forest. And everything would just be black by the end of the day. But he was always good, and I would always be the one he'd zero in on what I was wearing.
Yeah.
In the haircuts, he'd have John line us up, and I'd say, "Well, my
I
hair
give
shirt
8 or
is
9
not the length;
haircuts
it's the
in a
styling."
summer. Randy was easy because his was all curly. Rusty, he didn't care.
Yeah, but,
But mine was not the length; it was the styling.
Styling.
Yeah, you do.
we got that
style your hair.
73, 74
You do
when civil
style
rights
your
came
hair.
in, that you couldn't tell us what we were to look like. So that's when, hair became longer, bushier. Everybody had facial hair of some sort, some more than
Indian
others.
was the hardest one to cut hair.
Remember old Jim Judd right there? Remember him? He pretty much, that's how he looked all the time.